Welcome. Come on in. It's Thursday and it's happy hour. Home happy hour to be exact. So grab a drink and let's get started. Hi everybody. This week on our home happy hour, we're talking about February, which happens to be Black History Month. There are so many resources on this topic, and as a white woman, I'm still learning all kinds of information about how we have done wrong and how we could do better. So a few things that you should know. There are great resources that we're gonna list so that you can check out some fantastic local businesses that you should stop by and say hello. Second, you should probably bone up on how our whitest city in the world has not done well and how we can do better. Some of those things are going to include redlining, which you might not know what that is. Redlining is where people would actually draw red lines around certain neighborhoods in town, specifically neighborhoods that had a higher concentration of people of color, and refuse to give them loans, which artificially kept the prices of houses lower than anywhere else. And that, of course, systematically enforced keeping prices down in neighborhoods where they could have been seen an increase in value and wealth. The other thing too that I've found learning more about this that's shocking is this was systematically done. So some of the federal guidelines on a national level from the 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, Veterans Administration loans, they specifically forbade people of color from being allowed to buy a home through a home loan. So either they had to come up with cash to buy a property, or they couldn't buy a property at all. And then, of course, the tragedy of Vanport. Back in the day, Kaiser, during World War II, this is a fascinating story, and I'm actually going to link to it below because it's really, really interesting. Kaiser Permanente, Kaiser, actually made all of his wealth in the shipyards. And he wanted to set up an entire town for his shipbuilders. And of course, there weren't enough people to build these ships. And so people started coming from all over the nation, and many of them were people of color. And the city of Portland forbade Kaiser from building a city. And so he said, fine, I'll go out into unincorporated county and buy a huge swath of land near the shipyards and build an entire town. And it's actually a fascinating story. The town had the first 24-hour movie theater. It had the first nursery and the first school that ran 24 hours because, of course, he had two shifts on his shipyards. They had the first and second shift. So he had the city running 24 hours a day for each group of people that were working in his yards. It was well known that the schooling system there was fantastic, and it really was a very lively and amazing city before it was tragically shut down by the city of Portland, that is. So in addition to government sanctioned racism, there was also private sector racism, and that still shows up today. In many of the subdivisions in Portland, you will actually get the title report, and it will specifically forbid people of color from living in that neighborhood. Now, there are several people in the city of Portland that are working to try and change that, but it takes a certain amount of legal acumen and also money to petition to get these things removed. So just know that there are still things alive and well reflective of what we were doing and have done. So as far as resources go, you should check out Priced Out and Northeast Passage. A local filmmaker made them both, and they'll help you understand the history of gentrification in Portland. I'm also gonna give you a link to a few other resources for you to check out. So you can support local Black-owned businesses now. So go to somewhere different than the place that you always go. And definitely don't go to Starbucks. So Check out some local Black-owned businesses, coffee shops, bakeries. I know of a few. And comment below. I want to be introduced to them too. Thanks so much for tuning in on this week's Home Happy Hour. I'll see you next week.